Hello, my name is Brendan Collins, and I would like to talk a little bit about my favorite part of sensation and perception, motion after effects. So, a motion after effect is the phenomenon of a stationary object appearing to move after viewing a moving stimulus. A common example of this is the waterfall illusion, where after staring at a waterfall for a while and then looking off to the side to look at a stationary rock, that rock will appear to float upward opposite of the water from the waterfall. Now, another common example of this would be a spinning spiral. So this spiral here spins outward and it looks like it expands. So if you were to stare at this image for about a minute, maybe a little bit more, you stare at a stationary or static image, um, it would appear that the spiral spins inward and shrinks, opposite of the original moving spiral. Now, you might be wondering what exactly is happening. Now, we don't know exactly, but it's believed to happen both at early stages of visual processing as well as late stages of visual processing. So, early stage processing refers to what happens at the receptors and networks leading up to the brain. Specifically, what we believe is going on here is neural adaptation. So, neurons tire after firing repeatedly and begin to lessen firing rates to below baseline levels. Now, in 1961, N.S. Sutherland proposed the idea that visual perception be seen as a balanced ratio of neurons firing. So, if neural adaptation happens and there is a ratio in play when you're viewing the stationary stimulus, that means the tired neurons won't pull their weight and you'll be receiving more of an input from the fully functioning neurons that represent the opposite action. Now, there have been studies shown, for example, looking at the ganglion cells leaving the eyes and measuring their firing rates after viewing the stimulus in cats, or moving a moving stimulus for cats. And it has been shown that these firing rates do decrease afterwards. But there's also evidence supporting high order processing, or adjustments or alterations to perception occurring in the cortex of the brain. Now, the support, some support in particular lies in interocular transfer of motion after effects. So viewing a moving stimulus with one eye will create the motion after effect when viewing the stationary stimulus with the opposite eye. So you view the moving stimulus with your left eye, right eye closed, and then you switch. So your left eye would be closed and your right eye would be open, and the effect would transfer over. So only 60% of the effect, however, is present when the stimulus is a static test pattern. So a static test pattern would be what I showed you earlier with the spiral. The image itself isn't changing, it's just being rotated. Now, the spiral in the top right corner of this slide would be what's called a dynamic test pattern. This dynamic test pattern would transfer nearly the entire effect over to the other eye. The dynamic test pattern being the image actually changing. So in this example, the white becomes black and the black becomes white and it repeats in a circle. Now, what this actually shows, it shows that there must be some binocularly oriented motion selective neuron affecting perception. Now, basically what this means is there must be at some point in the cortex something deciding what effect is going to be the most powerful in a way, most stand out. If there wasn't, they would represent the same effect, but however, since one is great has a greater effect of motion after effect than the other eye, it is clear that there is something selecting the dynamic test as a more powerful stimulus in a way. It sends a more powerful signal, repeated signal. Now, what does this mean? There's no definitive error-free way to describe this phenomenon with current research knowledge. However, we know that a theory must contain two parts: adaptation in the first stage detectors, which we know happens with those tests recording ganglion cell fire rates, and a form of comparison between different detectors at a later stage of analysis. You can see this with the ocular transfer of the motion after effect. Now, in conclusion, motion after effects are the perception of an opposite motion stimulus that was perceived after adapting to the stimulus. It represents a field of study with room to grow and understand the perceptual process, and this is in part what leads it to being my favorite part of brain, brain's ability to process sensation and interpret perception. It's also just a really cool effect. Well, thank you for listening, and I hope you